Hey everyone, it's your 40-year-old boy, Mark J. Welcome to another episode of nOne-shOt. Of course, as you know, this is a podcast where my goal is to amplify the voice and explore the intersection between culture, race, and the TTRPG space from a myriad of BIPOC perspectives. Of course, nOne-shOt is brought to you by Apochromatic Unlimited. We're an all POC space. Wow, I would say this now. Wow. We are persons of color, cooperative, collaborative creators that are working together to just be here and uplifting and make sure that the voices of people of color are heard and understood. This afternoon, I'm with a very special guest, one and only Kian. Kian has worked on worked with such brands as Entropy Emporium, Lost Caravan RPG, and High Shelf Collected. You are a TTRPG performer. On your Twitter, it says TTRPG performer, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark.
Yeah. Performer feels like such a big, grandiose word for somebody like me,
You
but
think so?
I really do. I don't like to oversell myself. I feel like if I say performer, that means that people expect me to like be good at what I do. And I don't think I'm good at it. I'm just a little lad who shows up and vibes and hangs out with their friends. And luckily enough, I have found myself in a circle of phenomenal people who
Yeah,
uplift me and who celebrate what I do, and I'm able to celebrate them. So it has continued on. But performer is, question marks, quotes, whatever you want to put after it. There's always an asterisk there.
I dig it. I dig it. Well, performance it kind of segues into what we're talking about today, which is the idea of neurodivergent people masking and their experience in TTRPGs. You put out a tweet a couple weeks ago, I think it was, saying, "Yeah, I want to be on a podcast. I want to talk about this thing right here." So here we are, Kian. This is your chance. Also, Kian, do me a favor, introduce yourself as well, because you know more stuff about you than I do. I bet.
Absolutely. Yeah, my name is Kian. My pronouns are they, he. I am a queer, trans person of color TTRPG performer. I am half Filipino. I was raised here in America and have been negotiating my own experiences as somebody who has a very intersectional identity pretty extensively in therapy, outside of therapy, and then over the last 4-ish years in the TTRPG space. I picked up gaming as a pandemic hobby. Part of my pandemic panic was
Same.
I need friends. Let me find them online. Tweeted actually kind of similarly, tweeted into the void and said, how do I find friends to game with online? And Hooper actually over on Lost Caravan was like, hey, I have a platform that does this. And
Love
then
it.
the rest was history. But yeah, I live in Austin, Texas. And again, I'm just a little lad who's lucky enough that I get to roll dice with friends and hang out and show up and tell stories. Related to the topic specifically, I was formally diagnosed about 4 months ago with ADHD. Um, and then informally peer reviewed and with conversations with professionals,
Mm.
autism, as early within the last year or so, those
Wow.
conversations have been
Yeah.
happening. So, very much late diagnosis. I'm 29 years old.
Mm.
And so understanding masking, understanding unlearning has been a really new and exciting and scary part of my life the last couple of months.
So sorry to interrupt. For people
No.
who aren't familiar, can you describe what you mean by masking, unmasking?
Absolutely. So masking, my understanding of it and my experience of it is it's this idea of how I exist as a person is not going to be socially accepted. Either it's going to confuse people, they're going to challenge me, they will ask me questions, they will say that I'm doing something wrong. And so instead, I'm going to learn and observe what other people do that's generally agreed upon is okay. And I'm just going to replicate that, whether or
Yeah.
not I think it's the way that I want to go about things, whether or not I feel authentic doing it.
Yeah.
It is a learned behavior that help keeps us safe. And it's often associated with autism. It's associated with ADHD. It's also something that gets associated with trauma because it's a way
Mm.
that you learn to keep yourself safe around unsafe people. So if there is somebody around you who has a certain expectation and you don't meet that expectation and you know that they'll get angry, you learn how to either meet that expectation or lie about it to keep yourself safe. That's another form of masking. So it is something that I think a lot of people don't realize that they do, especially
Mm.
if you're late diagnosis. And even if you're early diagnosis, my experience with the loved ones that I have who have much earlier diagnoses of neurodivergence is that it was kind of okay, here's your diagnosis. You still have to mask to get through society, which really sucks. That's really shitty to ask people
Yeah.
to do that.
Because you're not being authentic to yourself, which is kind of like, I don't know, for me, a healthy individual is authentic to who they are,
Exactly.
as much as they can be. And when you're role playing, when you're masking as someone or something else to be safe, that it just creates this kind of cognitive dissonance of who you are and who you need to be in the moment.
Absolutely. It makes it
Stress.
Yeah, it makes it hard for me just as a general person. I work in industries. I've always worked in industries that are very customer facing, and I've had to
Absolutely.
learn very intentional skills about how to maintain eye contact and what moments are okay to interrupt with people and what moments are unokay to interrupt.
Mm.
When is it best to speak my mind and when is it best to shut things down? And I know that there's no visual element to this, but I'm a femme presenting person. But when is it best to shut things down, be a, well-mannered, quiet woman
Yeah.
and let that go? To keep myself safe, which I think is something that anybody who is part of a marginalized identity, we understand it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't pick that fight because you're not in a safe environment,
Yeah.
which sucks and it eats at me. And so I think part of why I've latched on to TTRPGs as a way to start to unlearn my masking is because it's a way that I can kind of push back against that very vocally in a public space and still be safe while I'm starting to explore it.
Dig it. I dig it. One thing I found so interesting about this space in general, and especially with these interviews, is how TTRPGs have been like the bell was rung for a lot of neurodivergent people, a lot of trans
Yes.
people as well, and
Hmm.
everyone came running. Obviously, especially of course during the pandemic,
Hmm.
people were bored, people were depressed, people looking for social connection. I know I was one of those same of the same ilk where started in 2020. Actually, I think it was in 2018. My therapist was like, you need to do something with your life." I was like, "Shit, I guess I might play D&D. I used to do that when I was younger." Um, but yeah, during that 2020, that's when I jumped in as well, and I just found a community here.
Hmm.
But it's so interesting that there's so many neurodivergent people in this space who are like yourself, like me, who are performing, who are active, who are social, who can do all these really fantastic things
Hmm.
that otherwise I don't know if they'd be able to really do. Yeah, that's interesting because I find you can kind of just jump into TTRPGs.
Mhm.
It's there's a barrier to entry of knowledge and skill, certainly. Um, but it's really easy because there's a lot of other people who are also kind of like, oh, we're just winging it too, kind of
Mhm.
thing. But I think it's one of the most interesting part about was the last 4 years, and just currently, just TTRPGs in general, and the people that are attracted to it.
I think you talked earlier about authenticity and how
Mhm.
masking it's not authentic, and so it makes it really hard for a person to exist. And I think that's one of the things that's been refreshing for me about the
Yeah.
TTRPG space is that there is a lot of authenticity. Um, and there is a lot of authenticity with the knowledge that it is at the risk of safety and acceptance.
Yeah.
And when I have seen in the spaces and been involved in TTRPG spaces where it has shown to be unsafe, it is so impressive how quickly another pocket of it will open up and say, no, 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 we're not going to do it like that. You can come
Yeah.
and be safe in the space with us. Um, I always tell people that I didn't know safety tools existed when I started TTRPGs because my first experience, we did not have them, we didn't use them.
Right. Oh
And
gosh.
I didn't find out until halfway through a campaign in the middle of one of the sessions that somebody was very, very aggressively transphobic. And it was when I
Ooh.
was transitioning, and I was like, this is really unsafe for me now. And I
Yeah.
didn't know how to have that conversation. So I'm so grateful that I kind of got adopted, for lack of a better term, into these circles that are so intentional. And anytime there's been tension or I have felt like I can't be my authentic self in this space, somebody else has kind of opened up their circle and said, that's okay. We always have space for somebody else to join us here. So I agree. It has kind of been sort of a general alarm bell for everybody to kind of run and gather together, which is so much fun.
What have you kind of learned about yourself from being in this space so far? You said you just were relatively recently diagnosed, officially
Mhm.
diagnosed, but obviously you've been living your whole life not knowing
Mhm.
officially what it was. Socially, there's always like people are always like, "What's up with this person?" but but officially, it's like now you know. What has it been like since in the last 4 years since you come into this space, um, and are now just a part of this whole ecosystem, so to speak?
It is mind-boggling
Mm,
because I have one of the things I had to learn as a TTRPG performer is how to manage bleed. So the space of I have performed this character and I put so much of myself into it that now that I'm taking a little bit of a step back, I'm having a hard time separating those emotions. This happens with a couple of key characters of mine, one of them that I'm actively playing, where I have to really pause and say, wait a
mm,
second,
yeah.
so much of myself is in this. And that was kind of the first kind of probably uppercut in the jaw that said you
Mm,
need to like really look at how you engage with this. What about TTRPGs draws you in so much? Um, and so it was moments like that where the bleed would be so heavy that I was like, oh God, this is getting so close to home. What is it that's getting close to home? And I eventually was kind of just sitting there and thinking about it and talking it over with my therapist. And it kind of came to the conclusion where I was like, well, this character of mine just got to say, hey, I don't like that. And everybody
mm,
listened to them and it felt good. And my
yeah.
therapist was like, your character communicated a boundary and it was respected. And that's a space for you to practice that. And I was like, okay, I know that I pay you, but you don't have to come for me like that. But it's helpful. I
Yeah.
had that platform and just sort of like as a little aside, I always tell people if you are into TTRPGs and games, find a therapist who gets it because I can use that as my
Yeah.
flat platform to say, hey, I need to talk to you about how this game went down, and she'll be able to kind of piece and pull through what I'm talking about. So that's just always one of the things I recommend. But it was moments like that where I was like, okay, I can say this thing and I'm going to take a risk with saying it. And it almost even with the characters that are close to me, there's a little bit of a buffer where so I play a character called Nikki Breyer in a campaign over on Lost Caravan called Nova. And this campaign was supposed to be a one shot. It ended up being a full season one. We're on season two now. And so we have talked as a cast about how we had to learn these characters on the way. And for me, the only way to learn it was to say, well, I'll just put parts of myself in there and see what
Hmm.
fits. And
Yeah.
so Nikki is very much who I am as a person at my heart, and also who I want to be in a lot of ways.
Same.
But sometimes Nikki will say or do something, and I'm like, I know that this is a risk, but I'm gonna throw it out there. And I know this other cast so well that I can see what their characters respond, and then I can talk to them about it after and be like, wait, what did you as a player really think about that?
Yeah, wow.
And it gives me the space to be like, okay, well, if I had done that, this is somebody that I trust and this is how they might respond. And then I can kind of process that and say, okay, well, am I comfortable with that response? Would I
Mm,
have proceeded differently had I known that? Is there something I could have done differently to get my point across that might have been better well received? And so it gives me this kind of buffer to explore, what does unmasking look like for me? How can I take those steps back
yeah.
and then dive into it again? Um, that those are kind of the big things that I have learned is sort of, okay, well, what does unmasking look like? How the fuck am I going to set boundaries? I'm terrible at it. My therapist knows this. I've been working on boundaries my whole life. Um, but there are big things like that. There's sort of learning how to say, I need space from this right now, which is
Mm,
hard for me.
yeah.
Something that's very common with neurodiverse folks and often anybody of a marginalized identity, because there is this sort of assumed white standard patriarchy that we need to be aspiring to.
Same.
It's super fun and we love it. And we see it at a distance and we say, fuck that. But in order to succeed, there's often this pressure of overextending yourselves. I need to
Yeah.
show, look at how much I can do, even though I'm a person of color, even though I have ADHD and autism,
Yeah.
even though I'm queer and trans, which is such bullshit. But that's a mindset that's really common. And so I found myself committing to games, 2 or 3 games in a day. I would commit to games,
Ooh.
11-day stretches in a
Oh
row.
my goodness.
But I was like, if I stop, what if people forget? What if nobody wants to cast me?
Yeah.
What if there's a blank in my schedule? At the time, I was also managing a really aggressive, depressive episode. So I was trying to fill my
Yeah.
time because I was like, I don't want to be alone in my thoughts.
No shit.
So I had to take a moment, and in talking with a really supportive community, this gave me a space to practice saying, I know I committed to this, but I'm not ready. And I really need space because I need this time to myself. One of my favorite policies that I've learned in TTRPGs is that no game is more important than the people playing it. And
Mm,
so you can always
true.
take a step back. You can always pause and say, nope, I really got to take a breather as a person, and this game will be here whenever you are ready to engage with it
Yeah.
again. Um, so those are some of the things. I mean, I also when I started TTRPGs, I was using she, her pronouns. I
Mm.
transitioned to they, she, they. I
Yeah.
transitioned to they, them. I am now they, he pronouns.
Hey.
It has been my whole transition experience. I have started to negotiate my own internalized racism
Mm.
by creating characters that are very forwardly Filipino. I bring in elements of Filipino mythicism. I bring in food elements. I bring in names and places that tie back to my culture to start to negotiate that internalized racism that I've been living with for years. I let my characters kind of be a little bit, easily distracted and wander easily because that's
Yeah.
this not only is it sort of the ADHD and the autism of just kind of like pursuing those passions, but there's also that like childlike wonder that I didn't really let myself have after a
Mm.
certain amount of time. I said, no, we have to be an adult now. You have too many responsibilities. There are these things going on. Cough, cough. We call that trauma. And now
Facts.
as an adult, I can say, no, wait, I'm going to give myself space to just kind of do the dumb thing.
Yeah.
I had a character who died one time because it stuck its head through a wall panel and there was a rat king on the other side.
Oh yeah.
Like, I have had a character who has eaten things that they shouldn't have. One of my characters is like attached right now to this like purgatory space because it put on an amulet and stepped in front of death because it felt like it. My characters are impulsive as hell, but it's fun to be able to do that and to kind of get that itch out. And somebody who also tries to really navigate impulsive thoughts, I can just say, well, my character's going to do it, and it gets that itch, and then I can go
Yeah.
back to my normal day to day and say, I'm not going to go lick the colorful thing that I think looks cool because not just because I'm masking, but also because it might be unsafe. So we're just going to make sure that things are okay.
I have a
Um,
similar character. Anytime someone asks me to play D&D, and I really it's rare these days, rare these days. I have one character that I'm almost always bring, and they are so dumb, and I love them so much. They're
yes.
not dumb, they're smart, but it's like if someone's explaining the plan, they're like spray painting the wall. Like
Yeah.
they're not. They're like, okay, there's a plan. I guess I'll figure it out later. Like they are just so precious and not there. And I love playing them for similar reasons. Just like I don't want to be like the person coming up with the plan. I don't want to be overthinking things. I don't want
No.
to be, I just want to be like this cool cat person who does graffiti on the wall and steals things. Like I just want to let me explore that part of me that is simple.
Yes.
That is just like different from who I normally am, which is overthinking, over planning, and then also not doing anything I planned or thought of because I get so caught up in other things. I want to slide back a little bit, Kian, to what you were talking about earlier. And they all kind of combine therapy, TTRPGs and therapy, and then TTRPGs and risk. A lot of people find TTRPGs very therapeutic for reasons you said. You get to perform little social experiments in some ways. You become your own social scientist. Like, can I try this? Is this gonna work? Can I explore this part of me that has never been seen before? Um, can I write this into a character that I've never even talked to anyone about? Well,
Mhm.
maybe a therapist. And I've done in the past too, where like I've brought my game experience into therapy, and I was like, "Ooh, we're about to get deep now," because I'm really exploring things with different people that I've never been able to explore before. I think part of my exploration, again, similar to you with my own gender, was through character, which has been a lot of fun. But I think one thing that's really critical about the overall process of playing a character is playing with a good table, and then feeling like you can take those risks, as you
Mhm.
said, socially with just different parts of yourself bleeding into your character. Um, that's one of the most amazing parts of it to me is being able to take those little risks. It's just I don't know. There's not many places that are socially acceptable to do that kind of thing. And then we also have the tools to like process things afterwards, kind of before, during, and afterwards, which is really phenomenal, really phenomenal.
As at least my neurodivergence works, I
Mhm.
like that I have a guide.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like that we have, hey, these are your lines and bails, and I can pull that sheet up and I can sit and read over, okay, these are the things that people say don't include in the game.
yeah,
These are the things that I need to like allude to and can move on from.
yeah,
And these are green means go. And it's color coded and pretty. My neurodivergent brain is just like, I can latch onto this and I can
yeah.
remember these things in the game. But it
Sorry to interrupt
does.
because there's so many times you're dealing with people and they bring up something you just don't want to talk about. It's like, oh my god, can I X card this thing? For those who don't know, X card and TTRPGs is if there's something that comes up that we don't want to deal with. A lot of times I see things like child endangerment or sexual assault. We'll say X or put out a physical card that has an X on it, and that means like stop and move on. But there's times in social situations where I'm like, I don't want to be talking about this. This is none of your business. This is actually things that like really, really are gonna stress me out and make me not like
Mhm.
you anymore. Um, but so I definitely dig the just like the real cut and dry
Yes.
uh system we have of safety to
Yeah.
talk with people
And
to play games.
I think it primarily being a virtual platform, at least for me, I've only done a handful of in-person games, is
Mm,
the privacy that that can afford for safety. I can message privately the GM and say,
true.
I need to X card this topic, or yellow, I am having a really hard time processing. Please don't ask me to engage right now. I will let you
Mhm.
know when I'm ready to re-engage. And I'm lucky that I have GMs that are super receptive to that and they just say, yep, let me know what you need. And like I've had GMs even go as far to say, like, let me know if we need to go to break so that you can completely remove yourself from the
Mm,
conversation. I manage a disability. I have mobility challenges, I have chronic illnesses, and so I like learning to take that space to step away has been so helpful because I have one, the privacy modem, and or, I'm sorry, learning to be able to take that space away. What has been
yeah,
helpful are the safety tools because I have the privacy that I can just message somebody and the language is there. Red card, let's
yeah,
move on. And it
yeah.
is I'm just like you. I wish that I could just carry red cards around with me. Somebody says something, I'll just drop that card in and just excuse myself from the
Yeah.
conversation. You want to keep going, go crazy, but that's not for me. Oh, I wish that we could do that. It would be so nice.
It it definitely would be a rare situation. I know I've done that with my family. I have a big family and we all get together. It's an enclosed space and it's very loud. And there's only so much of that I can take. So what I usually do is like remove myself, find like a quiet room and just like, look at my phone or something.
Hmm.
And then inevitably a group of people always comes and says, "Hey, there's Mark. Let's get it." I'm like, no, this is not that room. This is like the chill room, just
Yep.
for people who want to break. Because I'm also looking at my family, and half of y'all neurodivergent anyway, so don't come in here looking like I'm different. I see y'all. I see you not drinking soda
Oh
because it's too
man.
bubbly. Don't act like you don't know.
Every single time a family member says, "Yeah, the overheads are just so loud," I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And you don't
Mm,
understand why I have overstimulus when it comes to sounds. Like, that's fine.
yeah. But it's such I don't know, a gift to be able to communicate in such an open way, in such an honest way, to have those kind of safety tools, so we can have better games, so we can have better
Hmm.
performances. So, like you said, we can take risks for that character, which ultimately make the game better. Um,
It
there's a part
really,
of me that wants to say ultimately makes the audience connect more, but like nobody watches anything we do. So I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
we're not in it because we get paid the big bucks. I think we
Yeah,
can be honest.
yeah. But it feels good to make that to have that. It
Hmm.
feels good to put ourselves out there. Yeah.
I think even being honest about it in your character, and as much as you were comfortable and is safe to being honest about it as a person,
Mm,
is so big. I am so lucky that somebody who I consider a mentor in the TTRPG space, is one of the first trans people that I got to see performing, where I said to myself, because I not because, but at the time I didn't know that they were trans.
mhm,
And I said to myself, I really like their voice. And as somebody who has struggled with voice dysphoria so much, to
yeah.
later find out this was a trans person who does what I want to do and is able to do it really damn well, just blew my mind. And I'm
Mm.
so grateful that I get to work with this person very regularly.
Is it okay
Um,
if you say the name?
I think so. I didn't ask their permission, which is why I was pausing, but
Okay. Yeah.
I think that they would be comfortable with it. It's JD. They go by JD, not Jason
Cool.
Dean. On they're typically over on Live from the Apocalypse, but I'm in a game of theirs right now that they're running on Entropy. But he's so phenomenal. He's so kind, such a good human. I've learned so much from him as a player about how to be safe, how to take care of myself,
Mm,
and also just like bring my whole self to the table and recognize when bringing your whole self is you're bringing your whole self to a safe environment, but it might not be safe for you because you don't have the spoons to do that
yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And to say, nah, it's okay. You can just, it's all right to do that. It's something that he shared with me one time, that like pointing out that what we do is improv. And so sometimes you're going to improv something that's real close to home
Mm,
because that's what's easy and accessible to you. And it's okay if you have to say, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and kind of scale things back, because we're truly making it up as we go. Whatever
yeah.
gets laid in front of us, you see a shiny red button, you get to decide to push it or not, and there will probably be consequences either way. And so it's okay if you start to bring yourself to that and you start to unmask a little bit, and then you're like, oh, I don't have the
Mm,
space, or this didn't go the way that I wanted. You can totally scale that back. Um, and if you feel like you can't, and this is almost talking to my younger self, but if you feel like you
please,
can't,
yeah.
that's not the table for you. That's not
Yeah.
the table that you should be at. I've had tables where GMs have offered and said, we can completely cut this whole storyline. That if it doesn't feel safe to you anymore, if something has come up that feels inaccessible, let's cut the storyline. Let's change it. Let's modify things. I've had tables where GMs haven't taken those precautions and the stings really hurt, and they
Yeah.
still do. And I think about them, even though those were years ago. Um, so definitely, I mean, make sure as GMs, in my opinion, everybody needs to enjoy the game, and it's players and GMs working together. And so players need to work to make sure that their GM feels more comfortable. Typically, the GM has a little bit more experience because they're the ones running the game. They know the system, they know what to expect. Hopefully, they know their players. All of this is very hopeful, I
Yeah.
recognize. But if you are the one coming to the table with more experience, make sure that you're creating a safe space for the other people. Make sure that they
Mm,
feel comfortable coming to you to say, this is not great for me. Um, Mark, I know that you're part of the TTRPG space virtually. We've seen a lot of explosions the last couple of years. I would say pretty concentrated internally in spaces where somebody says something,
mm,
and taken out of context or not, it's hurtful to somebody else.
yeah. Yeah.
Things come to light and it gets revealed this has not been a safe space for this person who has this identity, and it
Mm,
hasn't been for a long time, and they were trying to work through that. And it's really, really unfortunate, and it makes me sad every time I see it, because I'm like, man, somebody is learning a really hard fucking lesson right now, and they're
Yeah.
having to learn it in front of all of us. And we're a small circle. We all see each other,
Yeah.
and it sucks because I cannot imagine it. And I mean, honestly, it's a good kind of pressure, but it makes me pause when I say things because I'm like, do I need to, am I going about
Yeah.
this the right way? I
Yeah.
am, in the public light about this. In classic ADHD fashion, I know that I had a thread that I was originally following, and a different thread has caught my attention.
Well, let me
So,
if I may interrupt you,
yeah.
um, because on our Discord server, the Apochromatic Unlimited Discord server,
Mhm.
it was like a 24, like a straight 24-hour conversation almost. It lasted from Friday at 2 p.m. Started at Friday 2 p.m. and ended at like Saturday 3:30. And we're talking about something similar of how people engage with, I guess, their own kind of concerns in public. Somebody slights you, or somebody says something you didn't like, or made you feel uncomfortable. And we've gotten to a point in the space and online where it's like, hey, that person hates me, or that person just did me dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot of context. There's sometimes, not always, but sometimes there's very little conversation just between those two people.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, yo, you hurt me. That shit sucked. There's a lot of like just dogpiling. Like, I mean, to me, it's just kind of a virtual lynch mob sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's so hard for everyone to be going through that because now your issues are being focused on 1,000 different lenses of
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of different people who all want to chime in, and just part of the human experience of like we're kind of in our thoughts. Sometimes we get binary, and rationally we shouldn't be, but we're
Mm-hmm.
like good, bad, yes, no, evil, nice. Like, this person's said something bad, they are bad, throw them out. And it's like, they might be bad, they might really be bad,
Yep.
but I hate I say this begrudgingly, but even the bad people need support. And actually, they need more support because bad people can like create 100 victims.
Ah,
So if you get that bad person support, uh, before they create 100 victims, they will be less bad. Um, but yeah, just the idea of everyone jumping in, because sometimes there's a real abuse and traumatic things have happened, and
mm-hmm.
even those things don't necessarily need to be adjudicated publicly sometimes. But here we are in this in this space, um, in this social circle where essentially we all just want to play games and have a good time. And sometimes it's like anytime that's interrupted, um, it just causes shockwaves throughout the space. Like you said, explosions,
It
um,
it
over
really
and over again.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's been hard. I'd mentioned earlier, like that there's a lot of value in bringing your unmasking and who you are as a person, both to your character and also to you as a player at the table. Um, Inadvertently, sometimes that also gives the bad people, they feel like they can unmask too. That's not
Mm-hmm.
the unmasking we want.
Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. If you're a bad person, those are inside thoughts. Don't act on them, don't share them.
Mm,
But it is hard because sometimes you do see people who it is a genuine mistake. I run into this a lot with my
yeah.
pronouns because I'm femme presenting and I use they, he pronouns.
Mm,
People slip up all the time. I grew up in the South, Texas, born and raised, very unfortunate. People are going to ma'am me until I'm dead.
yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And I know that it comes from generally a place of respect, how much respect can be done, especially down here. If I'm walking through a grocery store and somebody says, "Thank you, ma'am," I'm not going to fault them for it because
Mm.
that was not an intentional slight. They're not, that's not something that I feel like I need to lend my energy to.
Otherwise, you never go anywhere.
I
You
never
won't,
make it through the
you
parking
accomplish
lot.
anything. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
that I did have somebody reach out to me about a game opportunity, and I was very excited about it. And within the next, I think, like 5 hours, something came to light on the channel that they were primarily attached to that I realized this might not be a safe space for me. And I talk to my partner, and I had a long conversation with them where I was like, I feel bad because I think that they're open to learning. I just don't think I have the spoons to teach them. I don't feel like this is
Yeah.
a lesson that I feel like teaching right now. And that is what it comes down to. If you have a marginalized identity, it is great if you want to put yourself out there as a resource. It is not your job to teach people how to respect you. You can absolutely provide those resources. You can also say, here's a great article, move on with your day
Yeah.
because it's exhausting. Um,
Or like, hey, here's my friend. They love doing this shit.
Exactly. This is somebody who you can talk to who is an actual consultant or who does
Hmm.
sensitivity reading or who
Yeah.
does X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah.
But it's hard because sometimes when things get thrown out and you see it as a whole, part of me is like, well, shit. I think that they are open to learning and I think that it
Hmm.
is helpful. And now, and I struggle with this a lot of this, like, okay, I I I don't like saying that I have a platform because it's very small, but people invite me to games and I am known in the TTRPG space to a certain extent. And I
Yeah.
am so grateful for the connections. And so I do have to think about, well, if I am aligning myself with somebody and giving them that opportunity to learn, what does that say publicly?
Hmm.
And who do I need to clarify that message with personally?
Yeah.
Because publicly, look, I love games. If tomorrow something happened and I could never play them again, I would be like, that would devastate me. But
True.
if tomorrow something happened and I could never perform online again, I would suck, but I would be okay. So I kind of have to hand select those people and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this for this person, and it's going to kind of put me in connection with them. What
Hmm.
are your thoughts? Do you think I'm doing a bad thing? Does it make sense what I'm trying to do? Does it seem achievable? And it's hard to be aware. I mean, as we all know, it's hard to be an empathetic human and live on the internet as we
Hmm.
do. Like
Yeah.
it's just difficult, related to TTRPG space or not. Everything that's happening in the world is happening in real time on
Yeah.
social media. I wrote a thesis, and it was a topic that I really loved exploring about how the sort of traditional hero, that the Odysseus, if you
Hmm.
will, doesn't exist anymore. We get to see what happens when they go overseas. We get to see what
Hmm.
happens when
Yeah.
they go down the block, and we see the terrible shit that's going down. And I think that that's really changed who we are as people. That's one of the
Interesting.
things that I think makes TTRPGs authentic is because we're negotiating with these realities that previous generations haven't seen up front.
That's very true.
Um, and so I think it's a hard line to walk to be engaged and be authentic and be yourself and still call people on their bullshit and protect yourself and continue to improve the space in the ways that you can.
Yeah. Hmm.
Which sometimes it does. There are often times that these explosions are happening and I'm just like, shit, that person's learning a hard lesson and I feel for
Yeah.
them so bad because that
Yeah.
sucks. Ugh, it's brutal sometimes.
I wonder about that, those hard lessons. Um, I sometimes wonder that people who observe hard lessons don't always learn the right thing from those lessons.
Mhm.
And obviously, it's like, yeah, everyone be nice to each other, everyone be kind to each other. That's totally fine. We love that. But there's also some people who are like, okay, super hide my shit. And there's also some people who learn the right thing to do is to jump down their throat
Mhm.
and tell them they're bad. And that's not always a good lesson. There's not always as with any culture, with any system, the progress is going to be slow.
Mhm.
And it's not always going to be felt or observable until much later. I work with a gentleman named Stephen Huddleston. He's a historian and he's been playing TTRPG since the 70s. He's like, yeah, shit's changed a lot. But it's like, yeah, from the 70s, I bet. But
Yeah.
like from the last 4 years, it's like there's definitely been observable changes.
Mhm.
Definitely been observable changes. We stopped doing lists, which is good. But beyond that, I I'm always just curious about where the space goes culturally, um, as an ecosystem, just as a community, I'll say. Sometimes some ways we're doing great, and other ways I feel like there could be improvements, I guess.
Definitely. I think that my whole idea with TTRPGs and with my general existence, my policy in life is be kind to yourself, be kind to each other, be kind to the planet. We can
Hmm.
do those things. you're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
And I try really, really hard to live by that. And so I always take it down to the granular person. And this is perhaps optimistic, which I don't know that anybody would call me optimistic, so we'll see. But my hope is always that if I can be kind to this person and I can be intentional in how I interact and I can help them learn how to not necessarily be a better person, but to think critically about what they're doing,
Mm,
then hopefully they can take that and apply it to other things. That's my goal. It's not my job to teach somebody how to be a good person.
yeah.
I can't do that because a lot of times I am not a good person. I'm somebody who is learning. And I also think I heard this recently, and I think it's something to always keep in mind is that when you label somebody, as you said, in that binary, when you
Mm.
label somebody as good and they think they can do no wrong, they have the potential to do a lot of wrong.
Wow. Yeah.
They gotta be able, you have to
Yeah.
recognize like you really got to scale it back. I'm going to be completely honest. It's been weighing on me since I said it. Earlier, I said, that's so crazy. That's ableism, and I need to recant that. I
Mm.
need to take that back. It's a word that
Okay.
I'm trying to work out of my verbiage. I should have said, that's wild, something like that. But it's things like that. I
Yeah.
just hope that people can see me and say, Kian fucked up right there, but I'm going to do my best to own it. I'm not going to always look pretty doing it. It's not always going to be nice.
Yeah.
But I think it's when you bring up like that people are taking away the wrong lessons, I think that's a really important thing. I've had to work on it with myself in that I've within the last couple of years started to recognize anger as a really protective emotion and it's a really validating emotion because anger
Yeah.
tells you you're not being treated well. You're
Yeah.
not being treated the way you believe you should. And it's important. And I am not comfortable because of my experiences. I'm not comfortable expressing anger. I'm not
Mm.
comfortable sitting with it. And so I'm learning to say, okay, my anger is there. What is it telling me?
Yeah. Wow.
Sometimes what it has told me is the mean, ugly thing. And there's a way for me to both say I'm honoring my anger and also I shouldn't have said that to that person.
Mm.
I gotta acknowledge that and I gotta
Yeah.
do both. And I try to that is my hope is that as individuals, if we can all start to look at ourselves as critically as we're thinking about each other
Mm.
and learn how to hold space for that of this can be a good person who fucks up or this can be
Yeah.
a bad person who might be trying to learn to do better. I think that that's how we grow. And I think that that also relies on people using the privilege that they have within their identities. I look like a woman. I was pulled over one time by a cop and he saw my last name and said, "What? That's a weird last name." And I said, "It's my last name, sir." And he said, "That's okay. You talk like a white girl."
Oh,
And I
wow.
said, "Oh,
Wow.
okay, sir. Well, you've got
Wow.
the gun on your belt, so I'm not going to say shit." Like that was terrifying.
Yeah.
But it is a moment that has stuck with me because, okay, I look and sound like a white girl, less so now
Mm.
because I started testosterone, but I look and sound like a white girl.
Mm.
I am, I'm white assumed and white passing. I, most people don't clock me as neurodiverse when they see me. And so that means that it's my job to, when I have the spoons, when I have the capacity, when it's safe, to insert, be sort of that, inside agent, and then tell them, oh, look, you have been associating with and respecting somebody with this identity that you claim to not understand this whole time.
Mm.
And I think that that's what it's going to take to get these spaces to be better is people being intentional about finding those pockets that are not doing well and if it is safe for them to do so. And I cannot stress safety enough because we live in such an unsafe world.
Yeah.
Anybody
True.
with a marginalized identity, it is unsafe. And I never will ask anybody to put themselves in harm's way. But if you feel it's safe for you to do so, kind of do that role reversal and tell them, well, I'm already part of this in crowd. And I mean, that goes back to I've done a lot of work on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. I have led workshops about it. I have led committees about it. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And
Awesome.
that's
Yeah.
kind of what it comes down to is figuring out how do I be the inside person? How do we get
Mm.
that in group to view the out group as the same? Um, as far as like where the space goes from here, I would love to see more. And I don't know that you necessarily asked me this, but now I'm thinking about it.
Go off.
If I
Go
may
off. Yeah.
selfishly share,
Please.
um, I would love to see like APOC. APOC is a very safe, intentional space for people of color, and that's so important. And it has given me, I mean, honestly, APOC has given me, that was when I heard about APOC, I think it was Taylor who told me about it,
Mm.
Potato,
Shout
who's
out Taylor. What's
phenomenal.
up? Yeah.
I love her so much. I think she was the one who told me about it. And I remember being like, I can't do that. I'm like not actually a person of color.
Oh, wow.
And I joined it. And
Yeah.
I'm not as involved as I want to be. I was actually talking to Logan about this the other day. I was like, I really want to be involved in APOC, but I don't know how to break into it. And Logan was like, I'm sitting right across from you. Let's go.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll be around in that space more. But having that dedicated space, I mean, even the very small step of me saying, I'm going to go ahead and join this, that was my first step to starting to reconcile my internalized racism,
Wow.
which
Yeah.
is how I have started to undo my biases because I have a lot of them that I've had to work on and I'm
Mm.
still actively working on. But those dedicated spaces where you can, where there's enough of a collective where we feel safe and then that invitation gets extended. I think it invites people who are trying to unlearn their biases because of how they've been raised in the world that they live in
Yeah.
or because of intentional choices that they make. I think it gives them a safe space to do it. And I also think it keeps us safe. And I am somebody who, yeah, safe spaces is for everybody, but there's a reason that there are safe spaces for people of color. There's a
Yeah.
reason that there are safe spaces for autistic and neurodiverse and ADHD people. Like, and those should not be, you can't, if I am intentionally gathering with neurodiverse people, I don't want to I don't want to engage with the neurotypical person because it's
Yeah.
not safe the same way. You can have all the other spaces because that's what you get. If you are part of that sort of white, cis, hetero, neurotypical society, you get everything else. Let us have these spaces. But I would love to see more of those dedicated spaces because I think it also gives the opportunity to create the safety nets that we all need to learn and to grow. Um, Entropy Emporium, my partner JT runs it, and we have so many conversations about what does safety look like. And I think in part that's because that comes because we're both neurodiverse people.
Mm.
And so we have, I was like, literally 2 days ago, I was like, we need to make a Google Drive and I need this written out and I need this written out
Yeah.
because that's the way that our brains work. And I wasn't really thinking about it, but now I'm like, wow, like this could be really helpful for people who need just a visual. We can have the scripts written out, give them that visual, make it more accessible.
Yeah.
People who need to understand how lines and veils work, we have one that is color coded because for me, that's what works in my brain. That's what works in their brain. That's the one that we use in our channel. But that doesn't mean it has to be the only one. And I think it just like having those intentional spaces where you know that you're in a safe space and so you can kind of fuck it up and it's going to hurt,
Mm.
but you're going to figure it out after.
Yeah.
I would love to see more of those what start out as small pockets that intentionally grow.
Yeah.
And intentionally network. And this is something I don't even know if I'm supposed to like say anything about this. I would love to see a TTRPG networking con where we can all network and
Mhm.
talk about what we know.
Yeah.
I am a meeting planner. That's one of my roles in my professional job.
Yeah.
So like let's fucking go. I'm here for it. I'm ready. But I do. I think that those are the ways that we do it is we invite everybody who has learned how to engage in a safe way. And we
Mm.
talk about how do we learn from each other. And we make sure that other people who don't know that yet have access to that knowledge. We
Yeah.
have to, and I keep saying we as though we don't have the work to do, but I think that
Yeah.
that's what makes all of us safe is that we recognize we have so much work to do as people. And we're always going to have work to do. But I would love to see a network. I would love to see a network and let's fucking talk about it. Let's talk about how do we make this space better because it looks different to everybody.
Yeah.
And let's fucking talk about what tangible steps we need because goal setting is nice in theory, but you have to have tangible, accessible goals. Um,
Reach.
and I would like to see those small pockets continue to grow. If you are a group of people who are very intentionally, specifically focused on your neurodiversity in gaming, hit me up. I would love to learn more about what that's been like because what I have learned and what I'm so grateful for is my community kind of peer reviewed me first and they were like, yeah, but like you come to that in your own time. It sounds like what you're describing is ADHD. What you're describing is it sounds like autism, but you come to that whenever you're ready. And now I'm here and everybody's like, oh yes, you can finally embrace this part of you and you can
Yeah.
lean into it.
That's
Has been
great.
great. But I would love to talk to more people about it. So I think just I know that I've rambled and I'm so sorry. This is when I'm like, oh my God, this is the shit that I'm excited about. Let's keep talking about it. But yeah, I think that there's, like you said, there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot of growth that needs to happen. And it is hard because growth is so slow. And it's something that I struggle with any progress because sometimes I just want instant gratification. I want to do one thing and I want
Yeah.
somebody to give me a pat on the back and a cookie,
Yeah.
like, and tell me that I'm done. And that's not the way that it works. And one of the things that I'm grateful for is that we have such a wide network now, and there's more than just one person leading the charge, so that people can step down as they need and let somebody else take that lead.
Absolutely.
And you can lean back in when you're ready. So yeah, I don't think I'm getting off pedestal because I think I bumbled my way through that. I don't think that was like clean cut or anything, but those are definitely my thoughts on this phase. I do love it here. It's been so good.
No, I appreciate all that you said. I want to see more smaller groups pop up too. And well, first let me acknowledge the groups that exist at all, the groups that exist already. Um, there are those kind of small pockets of safe spaces for people,
Mhm.
and I love APOC U, and I want to see more. I want to see more BIPOC groups. I want to see more neurodivergent groups. I want to see more trans groups. I want to see more. Everybody have their own little pocket. Like
Mhm.
that's fine. And then I'd like you said, I want to see us all work together at some point. Um, I think that within with each small group, there's a chance for it to explode, but there's a chance for it to heal as well.
Mm.
And I think when that healing occurs, we can hopefully come to each other like, yo, this is how we fucked up, but this is also how we came together and healed. And
Oh yeah.
here's what you can do. Here's a lesson that we learned. Can we teach everyone else's lesson so
Yeah.
that we can all share that knowledge and experience? I'm gonna go way back. And you were talking about the kind of idea of excuse me. The idea of people making mistakes in the
Mhm.
space. The idea of people making mistakes in space and learning and growing and given the opportunity to like come back or um, be messy, I guess,
Mhm.
long story short. I feel like it's so interesting. We want that opportunity for ourselves, certainly, but we always give it to our characters.
Mm.
Somehow our characters, I don't know about your characters, but my character is always this messy.
Mhm.
And they're messy in the ways that I'm not allowed to be, or
Mhm.
I don't let myself be because like you said, like I don't want to get just bombed. I don't want to get blasted, you know.
Mhm.
It's just so interesting that we play out sometimes we're allowed to play out those messy parts through our characters that we can just in real life in the space amongst our peers even
Yeah.
uh, in real life, whatever that means. It's just I find that phenomenal so interesting. There are characters that are a lot more messy, or as messy as we almost would want to be if we were totally safe.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah.
I was in a campaign where the character was built on grief
Mm.
because at the time I was negotiating a lot of really hard losses. I'd
Yeah.
had a lot of people pass away within about a 6 month period.
Oh,
And I had this
geez.
campaign come up and I was honest with the GM and I said, I need this to process.
Yeah.
I really need a space. And that character was not good. He was so messy. Oh
Mm.
my God. I've never min-maxed in my life. I've never made a character where the stats are actually helpful. I always go on vibes. And he was the worst one where like he couldn't swing any kind of weapon, he couldn't shoot anything, he couldn't really do magic that well. Like he was trying his best. That was
Mm.
really what it was. Which like aren't we all? He There was a lot of me in that character. But I told the GM, I was like, I want to be somebody who is so wrapped up in their grief that they're gonna hurt others to feel better.
Mm.
I just want to
Yeah.
do that because I can't. I have to keep getting up and going to work and trying to figure out what the fuck my life looks like right now. And I
Yeah.
have all this grief that I'm holding and I'm angry about it, but I have to continue to be normal, quote
Mm.
unquote, about it. I have to just continue life and I need a space where I can just be a terrible person. And let me tell you, I cried so much
Oh,
in
wow.
that game on stream
Yeah.
because there were times when players would say things and everybody knew that I was using the game to process, but
Mm.
there wasn't this whole like, this is specifically what this moment meant. So it wasn't like people were planning it, but at one point, one of the other players told my character, "You don't have a monopoly on grief." And I
Mm.
was like,
Ooh,
"Oh,
damn.
man." That was
Who are you really talking to right now?
exactly like I'm sorry, are we still performing? So it's
Right.
not just like us sitting in like a group therapy circle now.
Yeah.
It was hard. That one was brutal to
Mm.
hear. And my character, up until the very last second, very morally gray. But I gave him that space to kind of like really mess things up. And it
Mm.
also kind of let me see, okay, when is it too far? And I got to think
True.
critically about where are not only these players' boundaries, because we had lines and veils lined out, but also these characters. I as a
Mm.
character and a player, I'm trying to understand these characters. When am I going too far with it? I have to do that in my day to day where I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, am I going too far? Am I not being clear enough that this is me processing an emotion? Am I
Mm,
asking too much of myself or the other person? The other day I had to tell somebody, I know that you want to just sit and you want to sit with my anger, but I'm so mad that I will say hurtful things to you, and I
mm,
don't want to do that. I
yeah.
need to take space.
Mhm.
And like I
That
hated it
happened to
because
me
I
recently too. I was pissed at somebody and I couldn't address them. I couldn't talk to them. I was like, if I talk to you, I will be the bad guy. I will be the villain. I will say things that I cannot take back. And
mm-hmm,
so I need a couple months. The issue was resolved after we talked, but I had to tell him after, long after I was mad. I was like, I couldn't because I would hurt you, and I don't want to be that person.
mm-hmm.
If we were playing a game, we could handle it, maybe. But IRL, yeah, my
Yeah.
anger is real, and it's dangerous
It
a little
is.
bit. Yeah.
It's hard. I'm a firm believer that kindness is learned.
Mm,
I've had to learn really hard how to be a kind person. And that is
yeah.
in part because I have heard and had said to me hurtful things, and I have done hurtful things, and I've had to learn what is okay and what isn't. Um, which I'm grateful. I'm glad that I've been able to learn it because I don't think everybody does. But it also means that like it's right there. If I
Yeah.
wanted to, I jokingly tell my friends all the time, I can be so much worse, which like 9 times out of 10 is a joke.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, I'm like, wow, I could choose to really not be a good person right now.
Mm,
And I could say something that I know will really hurt this person.
yeah.
And I have to figure out how to not do that. And then in my game, sometimes my character says the hurtful thing, and I can just
Mm.
shoot off a quick message and say, hey, my character is going to say this. Is that okay with you? I need to
Yeah.
check in before we have this scene. And if they say okay, my character can say it, and I have to help them pick up the fucking pieces when shit's in
Mm,
flames. And it's a risk. Like you said, it's always a risk
yeah.
because that could have turned a whole group against me. That could have had viewers saying shit about my characters. Even in just my like, brain rotting about my characters, I could have started to hate them and started to get
Mm,
disconnected from what they said. It's always a risk, but it gives you that space to fumble and fuck it up and know that as long as you're at a safe table, they know that you're trying, and they hopefully your other players and your GM feel comfortable saying, hey, like you're taking this too far. We got to scale it back. Let's make
mm,
sure that this happens. Um, I'm in a game right now that is dealing very, very closely with some of my personal trauma. And so the GM and I are in very close conversations about it, really
yeah.
intentionally,
Wow.
to make sure that I am in a place that I can do the story justice because it's important to me. And also that I'm not hurting myself, kind of, being exposed to this. It's a little bit of
Absolutely.
exposure therapy. And somebody was like, hey, my character might do this. And I had to just say, if your character does that, my character will not come back from it because that was so close to my own
Mm,
hurt that
yeah.
I was like, this, I just can't. And so in that moment, we were all able to say, okay, like, what do the fuck ups look like until then? Because right now there's no trust between my character and this other character. And I was like, if that trust isn't there, it's not gonna grow if your character says that. And so it does. It gives you a chance to kind of, to a certain extent, be a little bit analytical about where the fuck ups are gonna be,
Mm,
only because you kind of know, okay, like I know my character right now doesn't trust anybody, and I know I want them to trust everybody, and everybody wants that too. And so we know kind of where we are on that scale. And then we keep inviting them back. We keep my character got socked in the face and knocked out and teleported to a different dimension because they're stupid.
damn.
It's just a dumb. God bless him. I love him so much. He is one of my little babies. But like it wasn't, my character's an idiot. My character's kind of going in there, guns blazing, and has absolutely nothing to back it up, but they're not going to shut up. They run their
Mm,
mouth all the time.
oh my God.
And it's a hard lesson for them to learn. But the players at the table are like, we're going to keep teaching it to them because we like your character and we see what you're doing.
Mm,
But it gives me that space to kind of let him continue to fuck up and know
mm,
that he's got that safe space to land. And I do think that it's important that we try to provide that for each other outside of the games too.
yeah.
Even though it's hard because oh, there have been some things said that make me want to swing. Somebody will
Yeah.
say something, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to give you a safe place to land. I want to lay out
Mm.
some bamboo spikes and call it a fucking day because I am pissed off with what you just
Oh
said.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh man, but it's an important part, and it's an important thing to try to do, and I think it's become more important as we've said as these explosions have happened and things are
Mm,
coming to light. Um, But it's, man, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't want to. I acknowledge that.
Yeah,
Sometimes there are things that I'm like, that's not gonna be something I catch you from.
there are definitely things that we want to see in ourselves and in our community that immediately we just don't have access to. You know what I mean? Like we
Mhm.
want everyone to be healed and feel better, but it's like in the moments, like I kind of want you to just kick some rocks and like
Yeah.
never be seen again. But
Yep.
that's we wouldn't want that for ourselves. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, given making a simple mistake or making a hard mistake or
Hmm.
hurting someone. So even then, yeah, we want the support.
Yeah.
It's a even saying it is hard for me because I'm like, God, I don't want bad people around me, and I don't want to be
Hmm.
bad. But at the same time, if I did something bad, like I would feel bad about it, and I would still want support, and I wouldn't want the world to be calling me trash because I already probably feel that way inside, and it
Absolutely.
doesn't help.
Yeah.
Anyway, wow.
We need to take a second to just sit with that a little bit.
Let's all be nice people. Just kidding. Let's all be human and feel our full emotions and live in our true experience and um unmask as much as we can when we can.
It's true. Yeah. Get back to it.
Because
Get back to the unmasking because
yeah.
I guarantee if you are, I have it written on my fridge right now. What if every terrible, awful thing about you is actually just a totally normal human thing?
Mm,
There are things that you are holding on to that
same.
you think are bad about yourself that I
Yeah.
guarantee you are not the outlier. And if you can take a second to start to process that, oh man, it really does. It makes most days easier, I'll say. A lot of times
Yeah.
those weights come back and I'm like, I know I'm not a bad person for it, but I feel like a shitty person right now. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold on to
Yeah.
that because I need a moment with it. But it does. I think try to unmask to yourself as best you can, which is that's where it starts. There are things now that I say and I do. I let myself stim. I have all my little fidget things around the desk whenever I'm gaming. I just tell people now my auditory processing stopped. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking
Mm.
about. And people are
So that's
thankfully
why
in the
that's why
space.
that's why I cheat and play my dumb character because I'm like,
Look,
what?
I have
What did you just say?
I've tried one time to play like a smart, like
Mm,
planning, plotting character, but I, Kian, am so bad at it
yeah.
that I was like, it's not going well. Like
Yeah.
I just need to default to the like really impulsive, dumb little guy who's got a really good heart. But yeah, I mean it does. It comes back, unmasking, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, be kind to the planet. I don't know. It's what we got. It's an exhausting world we all live in.
It is. It is. Mm. It takes energy. It takes time.
Hmm.
It takes sometimes everything we have. But it's a life we have to live, and hopefully we make things better. Hopefully we've seen things improve over time.
Yeah.
Um, but like to take away from what you're saying, all those changes kind of begin like here, begin inside,
Hmm.
begin with me, you, the person. Uh,
Which feels so cheesy. I
it
feel like such a
does.
like gimmicky like self-help. Start with yourself, but like it's fucking true, man.
Yeah,
Like it
it does.
really
Yeah,
is.
it really does. Kian, thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you.
Wow, this is a hell of a conversation.
Thank you so
Well,
much for seeing my tweet into the void and letting me come and take up space to be able to share
yo, I'm all
this part of the
about that. I'm all
conversation.
about anybody who's like, I really want to talk about this thing. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I got the room for you right here.
Let's
Let's
go.
do it. Let's do it.
Oh yeah.
Um, wow. Like I said, when I invite people on, I never know what to expect. Because everyone's different and everyone's got their own
Yeah.
things, and some people are just like, cool, and some people are just like, let's go. Like this is the bomb. So I
I'm
appreciate you
glad.
being a guest.
Yeah.
Do you want to drop any plugs before we dip out?
Sure. You can find me on the interwebs at uptight_chiffon, uptight-chiffon, depending on where you're hanging out.
Cool.
I might be rebranding that soon to just take away the dashes and underscores because I'm tired of it. So we'll see. But come hang out on Entropy Emporium. That's where I am a lot of the time. I'm over on High Shelf Collective. I'm over on Lost Caravan. Go support APOC. They are doing phenomenal work. It is such a good, safe space. It's a Discord that I drop into even though I'm not on streams. I just drop in and read messages and it just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Um, But yeah, definitely I don't know, follow me on social media. That's you'll find me hollering about random things in TTRPGs and advocating for somebody because that's what I try to do really hard is to make sure that we're platforming voices. And truly, if you want a networking con where we all get together, talk to each other about the shit we're learning in this space
Mm.
as quote unquote professionals and quote unquote performers. I don't know who would call us that, but hit me up. I am ready to get things going. I've already started to kind of piece that together in my brain of what that looks like.
Love it.
But yeah, definitely I don't know. I've said it a couple times already, but be kind to yourself, be kind to each other, be kind to the planet. That's all we got.
You can really never say it enough. You just keep saying it
It's
until it
true.
happens. Thank you,
Honestly.
Siobhan. Thank you for listening, everyone. This has been nOne-shOt with Mark J. And take care. Also, free Palestine. Let's go.
Let's go.